An Ice Age hunter stands at the edge of a ridge, scanning a valley half a kilometer wide. A shape moves near the tree line, too far for most modern eyes to register as anything but a smudge. The hunter doesn't hesitate. Wolf, not deer, already turning to signal the others. Now, cut forward tens of thousands of years to a teenager on a city sidewalk, phone 6 inches from their face, squinting at a street sign 20 feet away and unable to read it without reaching for glasses in their pocket. Same species, same eyes at birth, wildly different outcomes. Here is a claim you have probably heard. Ancient humans never needed glasses. It sounds like one of those slightly too neat facts. And like most slightly too neat facts, the real story is both more surprising and more complicated. Most people assume this means ancient humans had superior eyesight, stronger eyes, better genes, some lost evolutionary advantage we have since given up. But the archaeological and medical record tells a very different story. Ancient people got cataracts. They lost their close-up vision with age, just like we do. What they didn't get, in anything like today's numbers, was nearsightedness. And the reason turns out to have almost nothing to do with their eyes being special, and almost everything to do with how they spent their days. The scale of the problem. Most people underestimate the numbers badly. In some cities in East Asia today, somewhere between 80 and 90% of young adults are myopic, unable to focus clearly on anything beyond a certain distance without corrective lenses. Globally, the figure is roughly 30% and climbing. This is not a fixed, ancient feature of human biology. It is, in the language epidemiologists actually use, an epidemic. A disease whose rate has surged dramatically within living memory, concentrated overwhelmingly in specific environments. The real question hiding underneath the ancient humans didn't need glasses claim is not about their eyes. It is about what changed in ours. The Inuit studies. One generation, same DNA. The first serious clue came not from a lab, but from a single Arctic community observed across 2 generations. Starting in the 1960s and 70s, researchers studying Inuit populations in Alaska and northern Canada noticed something almost impossible to explain by genetics alone. The older generation, people who had grown up without formal schooling, spending most of their waking hours outdoors hunting, traveling, and working the land and sea ice, had strikingly low rates of myopia. Their own children and grandchildren, who grew up attending Western-style schools with hours of daily close-up reading and writing, developed myopia at rates matching industrialized populations elsewhere in the world within a single generation. Same bloodlines, same DNA, radically different eyesight. That is not something genetics can explain on its own. Something about the environment itself had changed enough to rewrite the outcome for an entire population's eyes in a single lifetime. The East Asian evidence, ancestry versus environment. What came next, decades later, made the case almost undeniable. Researchers compared children of Chinese ethnic background growing up in very different environments: rural mainland China, urban Singapore, and Sydney, Australia. Children in rural China had a myopia rate of just 2.4% in their first year of school. By the time children from the same rural population reached 7th grade, that number had jumped to nearly 30%. Ethnic Chinese children in Singapore, with intense schooling and very little outdoor time, showed some of the highest myopia rates recorded anywhere on Earth. Children of European ancestry growing up in the same Sydney suburbs as Asian Australian children showed far lower rates, correlating not with ancestry, but with how many hours each week they spent outside. The uncomfortable conclusion for a purely genetic explanation. Whatever is driving this epidemic, it is not fundamentally about ancestry. It is about the environment layered on top of it. What being outside actually does, researchers eventually ran controlled interventions to test this directly. In several Chinese school districts, some classrooms were assigned just 40 extra minutes of outdoor time per day, split into 2 recess periods, while others continued as normal. After a year, the intervention classrooms had measurably fewer new cases of myopia. More tellingly, their eyeballs themselves had grown less elongated. Myopia isn't just blurriness. It is caused by the eyeball physically growing slightly too long, so light focuses just in front of the retina instead of directly on it. The leading explanation involves a process scientists call emmetropization. As a child's eye grows, it uses visual feedback to calibrate its own length, aiming for a shape that focuses light precisely onto the retina. Bright outdoor light appears to trigger dopamine release inside the retina, and that dopamine seems to act as a brake, restraining the eye from over-elongating. Indoor lighting, even when it feels perfectly bright, is typically a small fraction as intense as daylight, nowhere near enough to trigger the same signal. Put simply, a hunter-gatherer child spending most daylight hours outside, glancing constantly between near and far objects across open, richly detailed terrain, was completely by accident receiving something close to an ideal daily dose of exactly the visual conditions modern researchers now recommend to prevent myopia. What ancient eyes could not do. Here is the twist that keeps this story honest. None of this means ancient people had flawless vision for life. Egyptian medical texts like the Ebers Papyrus, dating to around 1550 BCE, describe cataracts and other eye diseases in unmistakable detail. A small Egyptian statue from around 2460 BCE shows what appears to be the oldest documented depiction of a cataract in the historical record. In ancient India, by around 800 BCE, physicians were already performing a form of cataract surgery, crude and dangerous by modern standards, but surgery nonetheless. And everyone, in every era, eventually loses the ability to focus up close as they age. It is called presbyopia, and it is not caused by lifestyle at all. It is caused by the lens inside the eye gradually stiffening over decades, a purely mechanical consequence of getting older. A 45-year-old hunter-gatherer would have struggled just as much as a modern 45-year-old to thread a needle or pick a splinter from their fingertip. The difference is not that ancient humans were immune to bad eyesight. The difference is that the specific epidemic sweeping the modern world, myopia driven by childhood spent indoors doing close-up work, simply did not have the environmental conditions to take hold at anything like today's scale. Why glasses took so long to exist? If ancient people did have vision problems, why did it take so unbelievably long to invent something as seemingly simple as a pair of glasses? For most of recorded history, the answer is that they simply lived with it. The first real vision correction device wasn't invented until around 1000 CE, when European monks, whose entire working lives revolved around close-up reading and copying manuscripts and who were disproportionately affected by presbyopia as they aged, began using reading stones. These were simple hemispheres of polished quartz or glass laid directly on the page, magnifying the text beneath just enough to make reading possible again. It took roughly another 250 years before someone in Italy, around 1284, worked out how to mount two lenses in a frame that could balance on the nose, the first true pair of eyeglasses. Even then, they only corrected presbyopia and farsightedness. Concave lenses capable of correcting myopia specifically did not appear until around a century and a half after that. For the vast majority of human history, anyone with meaningfully blurry vision at any distance for any reason simply endured it, adapted their work around it, or relied on people around them. Glasses are not ancient. They are, on the timescale of human existence, almost shockingly recent. What the evidence actually shows. It is tempting to hear all this and conclude that ancient humans were biologically superior, sharper senses, hardier bodies, built for a harder world. That is not what the evidence shows. What it shows is quieter and more interesting. Ancient humans were not winning some genetic lottery. They were, without knowing it, running an accidental public health experiment every single day of their childhood. Hours outdoors, constant shifting between near and far focus, rich natural detail in every direction. Modern researchers spent decades and multiple continents worth of data rediscovering, piece by piece, something an Ice Age childhood simply did by default. The next time you put on your glasses, remember, your eyes weren't designed for screens or classrooms. They evolved for survival in a completely different world. If you enjoyed this documentary, hit the like button, subscribe for more deep dives into ancient humans and evolution, and tell us in the comments, what surprising topic should we uncover next? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next documentary.